Welcome to today's Explainer. We're doing something a little different today, taking a really brilliant, poignant piece of metafiction and turning it into a literal survival manual for all of our modern anxieties. We're diving into a field guide to existential dread. And honestly, looking at how treating our absolute deepest fears like scientific specimens, well, it might just be the secret to actually surviving them.
Now think about this. How do you survive a feeling that doesn't even have a name? It's a heavy question, right? But the answer actually starts with a newly unemployed scientist and a jar of stolen worms. Seriously, let's get into it.
So our protagonist here is Fenwick Moore, and the guy literally got fired over a footnote. He's an invasive species ecologist who decided to boldly compare his college dean to an invasive jumping worm. He actually wrote out that both of them consume the nutrient-rich topsoil of an institution and leave behind a compacted, lifeless substrate. I mean, it's hilarious, it's incredibly accurate, but yeah, it instantly cost him his entire career.
Section 1. The Taxonomy of Dread. Classifying the uncomfortable.
So, right after he's fired, Finn leans on literally the only tool he has left, his scientific training. He uses it to categorize this intense, spiraling dread. Just look at this single-day downfall. He gets the angry email at 8:52 a.m., he's officially out of a job by 4 p.m., and by 2:14 a.m., he's wide awake on his sister's couch writing his very first field entry. He's basically taking sheer panic and forcing it into a structure.
And he names this very first species Terroris antilucanum, or the 3 a.m. ceiling stare. You know the one. It's this nocturnal apex predator that feeds on like those cringy conversations you had back in 2014, those unwritten emails, and of course the sudden crushing realization that you're unemployed and living on a couch. I think it's safe to say we've all encountered this exact invasive species in the dark.
But here's where it gets interesting. Faced with this nocturnal predator, Fenn comes up with a highly practical survival tactic. Step 1, do not engage. Step 2, write it down instead. And step 3, see if that helps. The whole idea is, don't fight the dread, just observe it, record its behavior, exactly like a good detached scientist would.
From there, Fenn scales this up into this massive, complete glossary of our collective modern anxieties. Think about Chronos melancholia dominica, the heavy Sunday gloom that mimics the feeling of forgotten homework. Or invidia algorithmica, algorithmic envy. That's the sinking feeling that feeds on our 1 a.m. doom scrolling through everybody else's highlight reels. Oh, and my personal favorite, mortalis subitus, the mortal glimpse, that sudden 0.7-second collision with your own mortality right in the middle of buttering your morning toast. It's brilliant, right? By naming these things, he actually strips away just a little bit of their power.
Section 2. The inheritance loop. A family heirloom.
Now, it turns out, Finn didn't actually invent this taxonomic method out of thin air, not at all. While going through some old boxes, he discovers Hereditas Methodus, or the inheritance loop. Basically, it's a coping mechanism that disguises itself as originality, but it's actually a family heirloom passed down through generations. See, Fenn discovers that his father, Walter, who was an old biology teacher and is now battling early-onset dementia, well, Walter used this exact same method in the margins of his old birding field guides to process his own world.
And this realization leads to this incredibly profound piece of advice that Walter gives Fenn during a visit to his assisted living facility. Walter just looks at him and says, "Name it properly, Fenwick. Then you can love it, or survive it." It's usually the same instruction. I mean, wow. That is a phenomenal takeaway for all of us. Naming our dread correctly is absolutely the vital first step to surviving it.
Section 3. Disguises of grief. Managing the unmanageable. As you might expect, Walter's cognitive decline starts introducing entirely new, much heavier species to Fenn's field guide. Have you ever experienced luctus bureaucraticus? This is grief disguised as administrative tasks. It's usually found at kitchen tables, deploying immaculate binders and color-coded folders to indefinitely postpone actual grief. You know exactly what this is. It's obsessively organizing insurance paperwork so you never, ever have to say the words, "My father is dying," out loud.
The survival tactic for this one, though, it forces a pretty painful, unavoidable reckoning. Step 1, finish the folder. Step 2, sit down at the table. And step 3, let the wave crash. You just have to stop standing on that narrow strip of highly organized beach and actually let the water hit you. Because let's be honest, no matter how hard you try, you simply cannot out-administer grief.
And this really highlights the brutal duality of dementia caregiving. On one side, you have Dies lucida rara, the good day.
That's marked by full presence, memories coming back on the very first try, and all that old humor deployed with its timing beautifully intact. But then, on the flip side, you have the bad day. Total disorientation, asking for a spouse who passed away 11 years ago. It's unpredictable weather, and being a caregiver means basically holding your breath and just trying to survive whatever the weather does that day.
Section 4. The unnamed country. When naming fails.
So what happens when the taxonomy runs completely out of words? What do you do when the grief is just too big for a clever Latin binomial? Well, you enter terra innominata, the unnamed country. This is the territory beyond where naming still works. During a particularly awful week where Walter is intensely agitated and just completely lost, Fen discovers a sorrow that completely defies all classification. There's no tactic here anymore. There's only presence.
Because sometimes you survive not by naming things, but by simply continuing to show up in the room where they're happening. Instead of reaching for a clever scientific label, Fen realizes that sometimes just sitting in that room, holding a hand, being the steady witness, that is literally the only sentence you have left to offer. And you know what? That has to be enough.
Section 5. Surviving the weather. The steady witness.
Ultimately, this deeply personal exercise of Fen's turns into a published book under the pen name F. Morrow, which, by the way, is a beautiful direct nod to his dad's old margin notes that always optimistically promised more tomorrow. Fast forward, and we're at a packed launch event at Whitfield's independent bookstore. Walter is sitting right there in the reserved front row good chair. And Fen? He intentionally skips over all the funny, clever entries. Instead, he reads the unclassified final chapter, the one about presence. He stands there and recites Walter's own handwriting and lessons right back to him, face to face. And Walter's response from the front row? He just says, "That's a real one. You got that one exactly right." It completely proves that naming a thing correctly, or just sitting with it bravely when you can't find the words, builds something that outlasts the act of naming altogether. It survives even when the memory of it starts to fade away.
Which leaves us with this final thought for you to chew on. What unnamed weather are you currently surviving? And what happens if you finally give it a name? How could classifying your own dread help you navigate the totally unmappable parts of your own life? Take a page out of our explainer today, maybe grab a pen, and just start naming the weather.